Happy New Year, everybody. We're in the studio, and these people behind me actually work with me in the studio, and I work with them.
When legends clash, the world listens.
It doesn't matter.
But I think
Ozzy Osbourne, who just died, bless him.
But this time, it wasn't a clash, it was a cut. A few days ago, the music world was shaken when Roger Waters, co-founder of Pink Floyd, made what fans are calling one of the most disrespectful comments in recent rock history. His target? Not a critic, not a rival band, but Ozzy Osbourne, the voice that defined heavy metal itself. And now, after days of silence, Bill Ward, the man who stood beside Ozzy since the dawn of Black Sabbath, has spoken out, not with anger, but with truth. And his words have left fans emotional, furious, and deeply reflective. Let's go back, because to understand the weight of Ward's response, you have to understand what Roger Waters actually said and why it hit the rock world like a sledgehammer. The spark that ignited the fire. Earlier this week, during a European interview promoting his new project, Roger Waters was asked a seemingly harmless question. Roger, as someone who reshaped rock music, what's your opinion on Ozzy Osbourne's influence on modern rock and metal? But instead of admiration, what came out stunned everyone. Waters smirked and replied, "Influence? Ozzy Osbourne was a performer, not a visionary. The industry made him larger than life. Remove the theatrics, and there's not much left." The interviewer went silent. Even the crew behind the camera reportedly froze. Within hours, clips from that interview spread like wildfire across social media. Millions of views, thousands of angry comments, and a wave of backlash that even Waters' most loyal fans couldn't ignore. One fan wrote, "Roger just disrespected one of the few artists who earned their legacy with blood, sweat, and raw talent." Shameful, another added, "You can't erase Ozzy's impact just because you don't understand it. He birthed an entire genre." But while fans raged online, one man, Bill Ward, Ozzy's brother-in-arms from the Black Sabbath years, stayed silent. Until now. Bill Ward's response, a message that shook the industry. On Thursday morning, Ward released a public statement through his management. No theatrics, no media hype, just a heartfelt, soul-soaked letter that hit deeper than any interview could. He began calmly. "I've heard Roger's recent remarks about my brother Ozzy. I'll say this. Disappointment doesn't even begin to describe it." But as the statement continued, Ward's tone shifted, from hurt to proud defiance. Ozzy is more than a singer. He's a cultural phenomenon, the kind of artist who doesn't just perform music, he becomes it. To see someone of Roger's stature reduce that to theatrics is deeply disheartening. Those words, "becomes music," immediately trended on social media. Fans began sharing clips of Ozzy's old performances. The wild eyes, the trembling mic, the screaming crowds, and the unmistakable electricity that only Ozzy could summon. Ward's statement continued. Ozzy gave his entire soul to the band, to the audience, and to the genre. Without him, heavy metal as we know it wouldn't exist. He bled for the stage. Every show was a piece of his life he never got back. And that's what made it real. It wasn't just a defense, it was a reminder. A reminder that the roots of metal weren't planted in corporate boardrooms or PR headlines. They were planted in sweat, distortion, and madness, in the hearts of four men from Birmingham who changed music forever. Why Ward's words matter. When Bill Ward speaks, real fans listen, because this isn't some industry figure making noise for attention. This is family. Ward isn't defending a brand. He's defending a bond forged under stage lights, drugs, chaos, and divine inspiration. Let's not forget, this is the same Bill Ward who, in the early 70s, watched Ozzy scream his lungs out in tiny bars where the sound systems barely worked. The same man who saw him record Paranoid, Iron Man, War Pigs, songs that didn't just become hits, they became holy scripture for generations of rock fans. Ward's words hit differently because they're rooted in decades of shared pain and triumph. He wrote, There's a reason people still line up around the world to see Ozzy perform. He embodies authenticity and resilience. That can't be reduced to casual criticism. It's earned, note by note, night after night, and he's right. When Ozzy walks on stage, fragile, shaking, older now, fans don't see weakness. They see a survivor, a man who's still giving whatever's left of himself to the people who never stop believing. That's something you can't quantify, and certainly something no progressive rock theorist can measure. The clash of generations. But beneath this controversy lies something deeper. A clash between two legacies that help shape rock from different worlds. Roger Waters, the intellectual architect of Pink Floyd, known for his grand concepts, his layered metaphors, and his sharp political commentary. And Ozzy Osbourne, the chaos incarnate, the madman with a cross tattooed on his chest, the howl that birthed an empire of darkness and beauty. Both men changed music, but they did it in very different ways. Waters built labyrinths of meaning. Ozzy broke the labyrinth and danced on the rubble. That's the essence of what Bill Ward is reminding us, that one man's philosophy doesn't invalidate another's passion. Ward even wrote, "We've all carried the torch for decades. At this point, we should be lifting each other up, not tearing each other down." The fans deserve unity and gratitude from the artists they admire. It's a line that resonated deeply with musicians across generations. Even artists like Corey Taylor, Zakk Wylde, and Rob Zombie reportedly liked or reposted snippets of Ward's message, calling it true class. Because when legends fight, fans don't win. The legacy suffers. Why Roger Waters' words cut so deep? Let's be honest, the rock world has seen its share of feuds, but this one felt different. Because Roger Waters didn't just question Ozzy's music, he questioned his value. He implied that Ozzy's entire contribution, his blood-curdling vocals, his iconic persona, his emotional chaos, was somehow less than art. And that's what fans couldn't forgive. See, to millions around the world, Ozzy isn't just a frontman. He's the embodiment of survival. He's the kid from Birmingham who had nothing, no money, no connections, not even confidence, but a voice that sounded like pain itself. That voice built Black Sabbath. That voice defined the sound of fear, rebellion, and release. And when you tell people that voice doesn't matter, you're not just criticizing an artist. You're disrespecting the millions who found strength, identity, and escape through it. Ward understood that, and that's why his response felt less like a statement and more like a shield. Ozzy's silent reaction. Interestingly, through all of this, Ozzy himself has stayed silent. No tweets, no statements, no interviews. But sources close to his circle told reporters that he was grateful but emotional after reading Ward's defense. Apparently, Ozzy called Ward directly the same night the statement went public. According to one insider, it wasn't a long conversation, just two brothers talking. Ozzy thanked him and said, "You always had my back." Then there was silence, and they both laughed like old times. That's the kind of loyalty that can't be faked or broken by a headline. The fans' reaction, a movement of respect almost instantly, #IStandWithOzzy began trending across platforms. Clips from the early Sabbath days resurfaced. NIB, War Pigs, Fairies Wear Boots, the raw performances, the energy, the sweat. And among the flood of posts, one comment stood out. Roger Waters built walls. Ozzy Osbourne broke them down. That line has already been shared over 300,000 times. Fans even began editing tribute videos, blending clips of Ozzy's wildest moments with Ward's quotes. He becomes music, flashing across black and white footage of a young Ozzy screaming into the mic. It's clear this wasn't just a PR statement anymore. It became a cultural moment, a reminder that respect in music isn't just about technical brilliance or lyrical depth. It's about soul, a brotherhood forged in chaos. When you think of Bill Ward and Ozzy Osbourne, you think of madness, sure, but also miracles. These were men who came from factory towns, surrounded by poverty, violence, and despair. They didn't dream of fame, they dreamed of survival. In the late 60s, when Sabbath was born, Ward and Ozzy were just two young misfits trying to turn their pain into sound. They created a noise so dark, so heavy, that the world didn't even have a word for it yet. So they gave it one, heavy metal. And when they played, it wasn't rehearsed perfection, it was possession. Ward's drums didn't follow rules. They followed heartbeat and instinct. Ozzy's vocals weren't pretty, they were primal screams of truth. That's what made it work. That's what made it real. So when someone like Roger Waters, a master of structure and symbolism, dismisses that raw emotion as performance, it's not just disagreement. It's misunderstanding the very essence of what made rock powerful. And that's what Ward wanted to protect. The turning point. By Friday morning, every major rock publication had covered the story. Rolling Stone, Metal Hammer, Loudwire, Ultimate Classic Rock, all highlighting Ward's words as a masterclass in integrity. Even veteran musicians began to chime in. One unnamed member of a major 80s metal band told Blabbermouth, "I wish more artists had Bill Ward's heart. He didn't insult Roger back. He reminded him what music's supposed to be about. Respect, and that's the beauty of it." Ward didn't fight back with venom. He fought back with grace. Because he knows something most artists forget. Legends don't compete, they coexist. Bill Ward's final words, and what they mean. Ward ended his statement with a simple, emotional message that left fans in tears. "Ozzy is my brother in music and in life. I stand with him today, tomorrow, and always simple, powerful, and from someone who's seen it all. Addiction, fame, death, redemption." Those words carried weight. They weren't just about defending Ozzy. They were about defending the spirit of brotherhood that once defined rock and roll. Because in the end, rock isn't just chords and lyrics, it's connection. And when that connection is lost, replaced by ego, bitterness, or old grudges, the art dies. Bill Ward refused to let that happen. This controversy isn't over. In fact, it's just getting started. Because whispers are already circulating that Roger Waters plans to clarify his remarks, and insiders say his next statement might just reignite everything Bill Ward tried to calm. But behind the scenes, something else is brewing. A reunion, a message, and perhaps a final stand from the legends who built heavy metal itself. And what happens next could either heal the rock world or split it forever. Some stories don't end in chaos, they end in truth. And truth, when spoken by the right voice, doesn't need to shout. What began as a storm of words has now turned into something no one expected. Not revenge, not rage, but redemption. Because while Roger Waters' comments stirred a war of opinions, what followed revealed something even greater. The humanity that still lives inside rock and roll's greatest survivors. A moment behind closed doors. Just 2 days after Bill Ward's powerful statement, a quiet meeting took place in Los Angeles. One that almost no one knew about until now. Ozzy Osbourne, still recovering from his ongoing health struggles, arrived at his home studio in a wheelchair, assisted by Sharon. Waiting for him inside was Bill Ward. No cameras, no press, just two old friends, two men who once created thunder from silence. Sources close to both musicians say it wasn't a planned reunion. Ward had flown in from the UK without a press team, without a plan, just instinct. When Ozzy saw him, he reportedly laughed through tears. "Bloody hell, Bill. You came all this way just to call me a legend?" Ward smiled, put a hand on his shoulder and said quietly, "No, mate. I came to remind you that you still are one." There was no stage, no applause, just two men surrounded by dusty amps, old vinyl, and memories. And for a few hours that afternoon, they talked. Not about fame, not about money, but about the music. The only language they've both ever truly understood. Inside the studio, the sound of brotherhood. An engineer who was present said the moment felt surreal. Bill just started tapping on the snare, soft like a heartbeat. Ozzy hummed along, off-key but real. Then Bill whispered, "Still feels good, doesn't it?" And Ozzy said, "It always will." That small jam session lasted less than 10 minutes, but it was enough to remind both of them that before the fame, before the chaos, before the misunderstandings and public feuds, they were brothers in sound. Brothers who didn't need validation from anyone, least of all someone who never walked their road. That's the unspoken power Bill Ward carried with him since his statement. He didn't defend Ozzy for the headlines. He did it to protect a bond that fame could never destroy. Roger Waters' silence breaks. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the echoes of Ward's words were impossible to ignore. Roger Waters' team, under growing pressure from fans and media, released a brief message through his official channels. "My comments were taken out of context. I have great respect for Ozzy Osbourne's contribution to rock music. If my words hurt anyone, that was never my intent. But the tone didn't sit right with most people. It felt more like damage control than sincerity. Still, it was something, a small crack in the wall of ego that many thought would never fall. Yet Bill Ward didn't respond. Nor did Ozzy, because sometimes silence is the response. They didn't need to engage in a media circus. Their art had already spoken louder than any apology ever could. The emotional interview. A few days later, a major U.S. rock network managed to catch Bill Ward for a brief interview at a charity event in California. The journalist asked carefully, "Bill, have you heard Roger's latest statement? Do you think it was enough?" Ward paused for a long time. The room went quiet. Then he said softly, "I don't need an apology. Ozzy doesn't either. We don't hold grudges. We hold memories. We know who we are, and that's enough." He looked down for a moment before adding something that felt like the soul of rock itself. "Art isn't about outsmarting someone. It's about outfeeling them, and Ozzy's been doing that since day one." The audience broke into applause. Even the interviewer, clearly moved, just nodded in silence. That short clip, less than 30 seconds, went viral. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Sharon Osbourne's quiet response. Later that night, Sharon Osbourne posted something rare. Not a statement, not an argument, just a single photo. It was of Ozzy and Bill sitting together in the studio. Ozzy's hand resting over Bill's drumstick, both smiling faintly. The caption was simple, "Still brothers, always music." Within hours, the post had millions of reactions, thousands of comments, and waves of support from fans, artists, and even producers who'd worked with both of them decades ago. One comment, from a fan who'd been following Ozzy since the early Sabbath days, summed it up best. "You can't cancel legends who lived through hell and came back singing." What fans didn't know was that during that studio reunion, Bill and Ozzy actually recorded something. A simple, raw instrumental track. No lyrics, no polish, no record label backing it. Just Ward on drums and Ozzy humming through a single take. Ward later described it as a heartbeat for lost brothers. No one knew if it would ever be released, but people close to the pair said the recording felt like closure. A full circle moment that didn't need the world's approval. It wasn't for the charts, it was for them. The weight of legacy. If there's one truth that came out of all this, it's this. Rock's greatest strength isn't its noise, it's its humanity. These men, Waters, Ward, Osborne, they've lived through every kind of storm. Addiction, fame, criticism, loss. And yet through it all, they've carried the sound that changed generations. But it's easy to forget that behind the screams and distortion are hearts that still feel deeply. Ward's defense wasn't just about pride. It was about protecting what little unity remains among the pioneers who built rock's foundation, brick by brick. Because when those foundations crumble under ego and misunderstanding, the genre itself suffers. Ward reminded the world, and perhaps even Waters, that music isn't a battlefield. It's a bridge. The letter that changed everything. A week after the controversy began, something unexpected happened. Roger Waters reportedly sent a private handwritten letter to Bill Ward, not through managers or publicists, but directly through a mutual friend in London. In it, he wrote, "Bill, I've been thinking about what you said. You're right. Sometimes I speak with more pride than empathy. Ozzy's impact is undeniable. Please let him know my respect remains intact, even if my words failed me. The letter wasn't leaked by a tabloid. It was shared by Ward himself in a brief social media post titled, "Respect Received." He didn't include the whole thing, just a short passage that read, "It takes strength to play loud, but it takes courage to say sorry." And that was the moment fans realized this story wasn't about conflict anymore. It was about closure. A final tribute. A few nights later, during a charity concert in Birmingham, Bill Ward appeared on stage for a short speech. He wasn't there to play, just to speak. Dressed simply, holding a single drumstick, he addressed the crowd with quiet conviction. "I've spent my life behind the drums, watching the world change, watching friends come and go. But I've learned something. Legacy isn't about what you say, it's about what you leave behind." He lifted the drumstick slightly. Ozzy left behind something that will outlive every headline, a sound that still saves people, a scream that still heals pain. He smiled. And as long as someone, somewhere, still feels that, none of us have really aged. The crowd erupted. People stood, many in tears, clapping for the man who had just turned an ugly feud into something almost poetic. That moment, that speech, was shared across the internet. And even those who weren't Sabbath fans felt it, because it wasn't about metal anymore. It was about gratitude. The final conversation. Later that night, Ozzy called Bill again. This time, the tone was lighter. Laughter mixed with exhaustion. One witness close to them said Ozzy's voice was weak but filled with warmth. "You always know how to make things right, Bill," Ozzy said. "You've got that drummer's soul. Hits hard, heals harder," Bill chuckled. "And you still got that voice that scares angels, mate." They both laughed. Then silence. Then Ozzy whispered, "Let's make one more before we go, yeah?" Bill didn't answer for a moment. Then quietly, "Yeah, brother. One more." No one knows if they meant a song, an album, or just a moment. But everyone who's followed their journey knew what it meant. The ripple effect. Over the next week, the narrative shifted. Fans who were once arguing over who was right or wrong began sharing something else. Gratitude. Gratitude that, even after all these years, the pioneers of rock still cared enough to show humility. Gratitude that despite their differences, they could still inspire unity in a divided world. Because maybe that's what Bill Ward's message was all along. That real strength isn't in volume, it's in values. And in a world where every artist fights to be louder, Ward reminded everyone what it means to be heard. Weeks later at a private event, Ozzy appeared briefly with Sharon, his first public appearance since the controversy. He looked frail, but his eyes still had that spark. When asked by a journalist if he had any message for Roger Waters, Ozzy smiled and said quietly, "I don't hate him. Never did. You can't love music and hate the people who make it." Then after a pause, he added, "Besides, if Bill's already handled it, I don't need to." That line, humble, funny, and deeply Ozzy, closed the chapter in the way only he could. The crowd laughed softly, clapped, and for a brief moment, it felt like rock had found peace again. Epilogue, the heartbeat of metal. In the end, what remains isn't the argument, it's the echo of two friends who reminded the world that music isn't about who's smarter, louder, or richer. It's about who feels deeper. Bill Ward stood up not because he had to, but because he still believes. Believes in loyalty, in respect, in the sacred pulse of drums and distortion that once changed the planet. And Ozzy, the Prince of Darkness, proved once again that behind the screams and spectacle beats a heart that never stopped loving his craft, his fans, and his brothers in sound. As the dust settled, one image began to circulate across every fan page in rock form. That same photo Sharon posted. Two aging men in a studio, one holding a drumstick, the other smiling like a kid again. Underneath it, someone wrote the perfect caption, "Legends don't argue. They echo And that's how this story ends. Not with noise, but with resonance. Because the walls Roger Waters built with words, Bill Ward and Ozzy Osbourne just tore down with love. Long live the Brothers of Sabbath. Long live the sound that never dies.